Millionaire mocked his maid, daring her to translate a foreign text for his entire month's salary. Nate Grayson thought humiliating Evelyn was just another game in his world of power and privilege, but he never expected her quiet response to shatter his ego in front of his elite circle. And when the tables turned, the lesson in respect was as unforgettable as the moment it happened. The marble floors of the Grayson penthouse seemed to stretch endlessly, polished to a mirror-like shine that reflected the glittering city lights outside. It was a world of silent elevators, designer furniture, and whispered conversations over crystal glasses. A world where power wasn't just held, it was displayed. Nate Grayson leaned back in his leather armchair, the kind that cost more than most people's annual rent. At 36, he had built his fortune in tech, transforming a modest app idea into a billion-dollar empire. Now, he wore his success like armor. Every gesture, every word, carried the weight of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. His laughter, smooth and practiced, filled the room as he scrolled on his phone. In the corner, Evelyn moved quietly, almost invisible against the grandeur of her surroundings. She carried a tray with delicate precision, making sure not a single glass clinked against another. At 29, she had grown used to being overlooked, though she had long stopped letting it pierce her. Her dark eyes took in every detail, every subtle shift in Nate's expression, though her face remained calm, almost serene. "Evelyn!" Nate called out suddenly, his voice sharp enough to slice through the muted hum of the city outside. She turned toward him, her posture perfect, the way years of careful discipline had taught her. "Yes, Mr. Grayson." He smirked and held up his phone. "You're from Africa, right? Let's see how sharp you are." His thumb hovered over a line of text, written in a foreign script. "Translate this for me?" There was no malice in his tone, not directly. But beneath his casual delivery lay something heavier, a smugness that turned her stomach. He didn't ask because he wanted to know. He asked because he wanted to see her fail. "If you get it right," he added with a grin, "I'll give you my entire month's salary. Think about it. A single word could change your life." The room seemed to hold its breath. Evelyn set the tray down carefully and met his eyes. Her expression was unreadable, though a flicker, just a flicker, of something sharper passed behind her calm exterior. "Are you sure you want me to?" she asked softly. Nate's grin widened. "Of course. Or are you afraid?" He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with amusement. This was his favorite kind of game, one where the stakes were high for the other person, but not for him. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She glanced at the phone, then back at him. In that brief silence, she thought of the years she had spent enduring subtle dismissals, condescending jokes, and assumptions about her worth. She thought of her younger sister, halfway across the country, struggling through college that Evelyn's paycheck supported. She took a deep breath. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "All right, I'll translate it." Nate leaned back, satisfied. Around him, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 unspoken promises. But none of them were as sharp as the truth that Evelyn was about to unleash. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the towering windows, casting long golden stripes across the polished wood floors. Nate sat at the kitchen island with a steaming cup of coffee, scrolling lazily through stock reports. The faint sound of clinking dishes echoed from the other side of the room, where Evelyn worked with her usual quiet precision. He glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. She was efficient, graceful even, moving like someone who had rehearsed every step of her routine 1,000 times. But in Nate's mind, she was still just the help. "You know," he said casually, not looking up from his screen, "most people in your position would have jumped at the chance last night. One little translation, and you could have been rich." Evelyn paused only for a moment before continuing to wipe down the counter. "Perhaps, Mr. Grayson, but not everything is as simple as it looks." Nate chuckled, swirling his coffee. "That's a good line. You should put that on a mug." He didn't notice the faint tightening of her jaw, the subtle way her eyes flickered with something more than patience. It wasn't anger, not yet, but it was close. For Nate, these moments were entertainment. He was a man who believed life was a game of winners and losers, and he had worked hard to be the one holding all the cards. Mocking those around him wasn't cruelty in his mind, it was sport. He prided himself on testing people, as if pushing them to their limits revealed their true character. Later that afternoon, his friends arrived, 3 men in tailored suits and a woman draped in silk. Laughter filled the living room as they sipped cocktails and exchanged stories about private jets, luxury retreats, and business deals that sounded like fantasy to anyone outside their circle. "Tell them about your little challenge, Nate," one of the men said with a grin. "Oh, right," Nate said, leaning back with a satisfied smirk. "I offered Evelyn my entire salary if she could translate a phrase. You should have seen her face, like a deer caught in headlights." The group laughed. One of them raised an eyebrow. "And? Did she try?" "Not yet," Nate replied, "but I'm sure she's been rehearsing all night." From the hallway, Evelyn heard every word. She had been coming to collect empty glasses, but stopped just short of the doorway. Her hands tightened slightly around the tray she carried. They thought they knew her. They thought they were in control. But they didn't realize that Evelyn had been playing her own quiet game all along. The penthouse was alive with soft laughter and the sound of glasses clinking. Nate sat confidently among his guests, lounging as though the room itself belonged to him, and in his mind, it did. "Evelyn," he called, his voice carrying an easy authority. She entered quietly, her expression calm, her posture perfect. "Yes, Mr. Grayson?" He held up his phone with a smirk. "Remember the challenge? Let's settle it now. Translate this. If you get it right, my salary is yours for the month." A few guests chuckled, leaning forward in their seats. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes sweeping over the text. For a moment, she said nothing, and the silence seemed to stretch. "Are you sure?" she asked softly. "Of course." Nate's grin widened. "Show us what you've got." Taking the phone, Evelyn glanced at the glowing screen once more. Then she spoke. Her words flowed effortlessly, the foreign language pronounced with perfect clarity. When she finished, the room fell silent. "That," she said evenly, meeting Nate's stunned gaze, "translates as, 'He who shames others will himself be shamed. Wealth can't shield you from truth.'" The quiet deepened. A few guests exchanged looks, their amusement replaced by surprise. "You really speak it?" Nate asked, his voice lower now. "Yes," Evelyn replied calmly, handing back the phone. "And 6 more languages, if you'd like a demonstration." Nate tried to laugh, but the sound felt hollow. Evelyn didn't linger. She gave a slight nod and turned away, leaving the room heavier than before. For the first time, Nate was left without words. The silence lingered long after Evelyn's footsteps faded down the hall. It wasn't the warm, pleasant quiet of an evening winding down. It was sharp, heavy, almost suffocating. Nate sat motionless, his phone still in hand, though the screen had gone dark. His usual smirk was nowhere to be found. His guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them let out a forced laugh, trying to break the tension, but it only made the room feel colder. For the first time, the effortless charm that Nate wore like a second skin seemed to crack. "You didn't tell us she was like that," said one of his friends cautiously. "Yeah," added another with a faint edge to his voice. 7 languages? That's not nothing." Nate tried to wave it off, his fingers tightening around his glass. "She probably rehearsed it. Lucky guess." But even he could hear the weakness in his own voice. In the hallway, Evelyn paused at the door to the service elevator. She placed her apron neatly on the small wooden bench, smoothing it with one hand. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished brass of the elevator doors, calm, steady, but with a flicker of pride she could no longer hide. This wasn't just about the translation. It was about all the times she had bitten her tongue, endured thoughtless remarks, and reminded herself why she stayed. Tonight was different. Tonight she had spoken, not with anger or defiance, but with quiet certainty that left more of an impact than shouting ever could. Back in the living room, Nate's guests began murmuring about their own plans for the evening, their earlier laughter now replaced by quick glances toward the door where Evelyn had disappeared. "Respect," one of them said under their breath. "She has it." And him? A slight shrug. "Not so much." Nate heard them. For the first time in years, he didn't know how to regain control of the narrative. As the elevator doors slid shut around Evelyn, a small, private smile touched her lips. She wasn't leaving with his salary. she was leaving with something far more valuable, her dignity fully intact and a quiet satisfaction that no amount of wealth could ever buy. And for Nate, that realization stung more than losing any game he had ever played.